Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier again with another guest, a brand new guest. Actually, it's a brand new, really old guest. I don't mean like an age. I've known David for 40 years, or I think, yes, yeah, it's over 40 years.
18
And
plus. 18 years old. Add
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and as I do on a lot of these. Have him say his name, spell his name, because some people are only hearing this. And if they want to get in contact with Dave, then, I mean, Arun Roth on WGBH for the longest time. I thought he was Amun Ra, the sun god. But anyway. So Dave, take it away, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, my name's Dave Dauer, Dauer. Grew up in Framingham, Massachusetts. Was born in Brooklyn, New York. Then went to Southeastern Massachusetts University, where I met Mr. Ron Fortier as an 18-year-old puppy. Went through the BFA program with Ron, and I'm still connected with most everyone I went to school with back then. Was off for about a year and then did a Master of Fine Arts program in painting at Kent State University in Ohio. And actually my connection there was through Evan Firestone, who was an art history professor at Southeastern Mass at the time. He brought that school up to me, and it was a good decision. Then from there, I came back home. I did get an offer for a job in Waco, Texas at the time, and it was a decision whether I wanted to take about a $9,000 a year job as an assistant art director, not art director, art curator at a small museum in Waco, or go home to New England. And for the life of me, I couldn't think of moving to Texas because I had this feeling, not that Texas is a bad place, but as a young kid, if I'd ever get out of there, because one job leads to another in an area, and family's a big deal. So I moved to back to Massachusetts, had a studio out of my parents' garage, was struggling for a year, and said, I was working in the finance industry. Here's this artist for a company called Avco Financial Services at the time, and became a manager. And no one knew who I really was. And I ended up giving them a notice and saying, I can't do this anymore. And I decided to go back to school for design. It was not an easy decision. My dad wanted me to go visit an agency, see if anyone would hire somebody who didn't know anything about design, because I was a painter and a printmaker. So I actually went to a couple agencies, got advice, and they said, go back to school, pick up a year or two of courses. I went back to Southeastern Massachusetts University, because the name still hadn't changed. And started taking design courses. I called it, I needed the vocabulary of design. So they wanted me to go into the newly formed graduate program. That was Dietmar Winkler sat me down and he said, David, you should why don't you become one of our master candidates? And I said, Dietmar, I don't need a master's degree. I have one. And on paper, no one would ever know, because how I presented myself is I had a BFA from UMass Dartmouth. I had a a BFA from UMass Dartmouth. I had an MFA from Kent State, and I had continued studies in design from SMU. So that kind of looked kosher, as they say. Ended up, started freelancing, picked up jobs for companies like Lechmere and others, worked for a company that actually did, what do you call it? Promotional pieces for companies, did logos on toothpaste and pens and all sorts of weird stuff, and ended up getting my first assistant art director's job at H.E. Harris Corporation in South Boston, and they made stamp kits for kids who collected stamps. And then one thing led to another, got into the publishing industry and ended up as the art director, creative director for Offshore Communications for 25 years, which produced Offshore Magazine, websites, a few other products. I had a long career there. I really didn't paint. I had a couple attempts all those years, had a family, a son and a daughter who are now married, have our first grandchild. My wonderful wife, Deb, has always supported me and what I wanted to do. And then the recession of the late 2008 to 10 came, and the company folded. We had since been bought out by a company, and it wasn't in their best interest to keep us going, although they kept the home company down in Annapolis. Started a website with my partner at the time, who's the editor, Tom Richardson, called Boating Local. And we were out of southeastern Mass. Tom lives in Marion to this day. And we developed a local news and boating website that did destinations. And we went from 0 people looking at it to 60,000 a month. We sold it because we couldn't financially do it ourselves. It's actually still running today as a New England Boating. Tom owns it with another partner, and has started some other things. TV, we did TV shows, all sorts of stuff. I left it because the people who bought me didn't want to. My contract had ended, and they just said, we'll get some kid to do what you're doing. And there I was. It was kind of perfect timing because I was up for getting some major back surgery, which was going to lay me up. And as I was laying there, said to myself, Self, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I was in my early 60s, and I said to my wife, hey, no one wants to hire an old guy. And because I tried, I was freelancing here and there again. But it wasn't worth the struggle in my mind. I said, I want to start painting again. And for my 50th birthday, my wife had a studio built in our home at the time. We owned a 2-family in Milton, Mass. We lived there for over 35 years. And I went down, fixed it up. It had gone into disarray, and just started to paint, once I was well. I told my wife, when I get 10 paintings, I'll start a website. Started connecting with friends through Ron's recommendation. I ended up with my first show at Cola back in, I think it was February of 2017. Maybe it's 16. I don't remember anymore. Might have been 16.
I think it was about the year before I went to Portugal. Yeah.
Yeah. And have been painting ever since. I've had lots of shows. I've gone into competitions. We sold our house in August of 2019. Lucky for us, actually. We're living in Canton, Mass, in a rental. I have my studio down on the lower level. Unfortunate how coronavirus hit, but I work, backtrack a little bit, in 2017 in December. I was getting antsy sitting in the basement of my house, painting all day long, 7 days, 6 days a week, whatever it was. and just wanted to get a job on the outside to get myself out. I figured I'd end up at Stop and Shop or something, bagging groceries. Um, but I actually ended up with a part-time design job at Dedham Health and Athletic Center in Dedham, Mass, doing all their design work. And they keep me busy 3 days a week. However, with the virus, everything's shut down and I'm back to working full time. But at the same time, recently I've started a new website through a company called Art Storefronts. It's a bit of an investment in myself, but it's actually, I went live with it on, legally live, I guess, on March 13th. So today is the 28th. I did my first e-blast to friends and family and started pushing it around the 19th. And since then, I've sold 3 pieces of prints, because you can get prints or of my work or originals. I've been making videos. I've always, made videos since boating local. We did probably 80 or 90 videos back then, how-tos, destinations. So I've always been into time lapse, showing the process of my work. Um, so I've been doing videos. So I have a YouTube channel, my website, which is called DB Dauer Studio Store.com. I still have my old one out there. And I have my Instagram, Facebook, everything's under DB Dauer. The only thing that stores the store. And it's actually, I've got over 100 new subscribers to my email list, people I don't know, which is part of the plan. And hopefully down the road, I can have a little secondary income from that. The other day I got 2 prints sold, and I was just like, whoa, I don't even know this person. They were from Texas. And I sent them out a thank you. And so hopefully down the road, I'll have more of that. Just another way. I've always tried to push different ways on how to get my artwork out there and for it to be sold. I have a gallery show in October, hopefully at the Lotus Gallery in Milton, which is in the town library. Someone supported the space. It's a nice spot. Not much else because there's not much else going on. So this turn down of, because of the virus, has given me the time to, really bust and push. I probably have 150 pieces uploaded to the site, and I'm finally gotten everything there. What's nice is even old work, which I may not even own, but have the imagery on file, or it's been, I can set up things where people can buy prints. And what sold was a couple watercolors and not the originals. So I guess that's where I'm at, and I meet with Ron and a couple other people, a few other people, about 10. We call the group Techum that we started. It came out of my show, and we meet pretty much every quarter at someone else's studio throughout New England, actually. And our next one looks like it's going to be a Skype meeting at one of our friends.
That's right. The first Skype meeting of the Techum group was when I was in Portugal.
Oh, right, and it was at my studio in the basement,
Yeah.
and Ron and we're going to do it on Zoom this time, but we did it on Skype. Ron was in Portugal. We were about 4 people in my basement. Another artist, Adrienne Kiernan Lavalle, was up in Maine, and she was in there, and it was just, I remember putting like a phone to show Adrienne Ron, and Ron her, because they were calling it, she was on Facebook, and Ron was on Skype, and we were sitting in there. They've turned into all-day affairs when we meet on a Sunday, and we have food and talk, and I know they could last for many hours, and it's they're all mostly people who we started out with when we were 18 years old. And it's and we just had a show at the Pawtucket Arts Collaborative from the group honoring our teachers from SMU.
Could
So
you tell them what TECM stands for?
TECM stands
And
for
spell it, because
TECM is capital T, capital E, capital C, and capital M. And we all went to school at which is now UMass Dartmouth under the tutelage of T. Edward Tagnieri, um, E. Willoughby Elliott, Bill Elliott, C. Herb Cummings, and M. Um, um, Frank McCoy, and all have since passed. Frank, I think the most recent in his 90s, Bill Elliott early in his 70s, and Herb and Tog years ago. They were all. We were trying to come up with names because we were all from those classes, and I think I said Techum, and everyone said, "What does it mean?" And I said, "It's our tribute to them." And so our show at the Pawtucket Arts Collaborative, um, Denise Wilhelm, who is a member there, pushed for it, and she was a year behind us. So our group is comprised of artists who are in our painting classes, printmakers, illustrators uh, um, turned painters. We have a person who's been on South Coast, Bob Brodesky, who what's that? The seven? What's that thing?
6 degrees, 6 degrees
Of Kevin
separation.
Bacon.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
6 degrees of separation. Well, he's our Kevin Bacon because he is very like-minded and met one of our compatriots, Adrian, when she was in graduate school at Maryland Institute. He was working, but painted down there, and she saw him in a show that I was in, a regional show, on the list of people, and said, "Hey, Dave, but this Bob Rudetsky lives in Milton." Bob has lived in Milton as long as I've lived in Milton. I never ran into him. He's a painter. He had a full-time job, but he had retired. His daughter and my daughter knew each other. They were a year apart in school, but we never ran into each other. I mean, and it's not the biggest town in the world. And we become good friends, and he's become good friends with all of us, so.
Well, that's part and parcel what all of this is about. The underpinnings of all of this. It is the 6 degrees of separation. It's imagine a combination of Facebook and Ancestry linked together. Um, we've already had a couple of guests who have had connections to the Maryland Art Institute, for example. There are people who work in spheres, and these spheres never touch each other. They're very close to each other, and it's kind of interesting. And that's what I like to do, is create this legacy, this collective digital archive, specifically for artists in the South Coast, to begin with. And I believe that this can expand further and further out at some point. But let me go back in time, and let's go back to SMU. And you've dropped a couple of names. Evan Firestone.
Mhm.
Your recollections of Evan?
Well, he was a art history. I took art history, all the required things, um, but I always like to get my money's worth, whatever I'm doing. It's kind of so. When I was in school, after freshman year, I started taking electives. I would grab once I got those major, boring, I guess, in our minds, art, historical, ancient art. This and that. I started feeding and taking as many art history classes as I could. I bet you, if we went back into records, I had as many art history classes that could have given me a minor, photography, history, whatever it might have been.
Right, right.
I mean, all that stuff leaves my mind over the years. However, if we're talking trivia, sometimes it comes right back. It even carried on when I went to Kent State. Uh, the woman I had an assistantship there. Um, and it allowed, part of the assistantship was teaching 2D design, and I used my 2D design as a resource on different things I would teach. But I also got to work with this woman, Sheila Tabikoff, who lives in Italy, and bought a house back then. She was about 10 years older than me. And she ran the galleries at Kent State, and I got an assistantship. And part of it was working with her, and she was an art history teacher. But I took an art history class that was all about Man Ray, talking about getting deep into things. So that was always a big part of stuff. So Evan, getting back to him, I had taken, I forget which ones they were, but I took seminars classes that art history majors and teachers were taking. And we got to know each other. I went over his house once or twice, and he said, "Hey, Dave, have you ever thought of Kent's?" And actually, when I got out of school in '75, I applied to a bunch of places like everybody else. I couldn't get in. I didn't get in. I don't know why. I mean, my work was a little all over the place. It always has. I've always tried everything and never stuck with one look. I even now, if you go to my website, I have my floral pieces. I have a little bit older, but you could see in like 4 years' time, I have abstracts. I have my floral pieces, which I'm heavy into and doing some. But prior to that, I had a surrealistic and mythical stuff and doodles, and now each one is its own body of work, and I have lots of things in each. So that might have even back then hurt me.
Let's go back.
Mhm.
So, how did you fare with grading with him? He was a tough.
Oh, anything art, I got A's in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, except for maybe those first foundation art
Yeah.
history courses with 200 people in them.
Per year was
Forget my
ancient
first
people.
year,
Yeah.
because that might have brought my grades down. It was more acclimating to school. But after that, I didn't see a B. I got A's all the time, high grades, even with him. And you had to test out in those, but I was very into it. You would think I wouldn't do good in my sciences because we had to take a science, and I waited it out for 4 years. And then in the fourth year, they came out with this class called Science and Society at SMU. And I took it along with about 300 other people. And it fulfilled the science requirement. And we had stuff like the hand reading, and they brought in a hand reader, the lines. I mean, it was a trip, and everyone was pissed off that took biology as a sophomore.
Yeah, how did you? I don't remember that. I mean, because I had, and I remember because it was memorable. But I was also very aggravated because I said, why don't they have anatomy classes specifically for artists? That would make
that would be great. But
so
anyways,
with Sanford Moss, who was the foremost shark expert in the United States at the time. And it's kind of weird because at the University of Miami, for the first 2, 3, 4 months, Jaws had opened when I got down there. And there were lines wrapped around the building 4 times.
Yeah.
It was like this weird shark thing. But so Evan Firestone.
So he recommended Kent State, and I started looking into it, and I got accepted and got my assistantship, and for $250 a month they paid me. I taught a couple classes, did a bunch of things, and I had a room over a barber shop on Main Street. That's where I ended up, in Kent, Ohio. And there was a nut store, and not people, but real nuts below. And I had a studio 2 blocks away. And
you were there after the Kent State.
Oh yeah, So I graduated '75. There was a year off. September '76. I was there, and I was there for 2 years.
Yeah, what do they refer to that as? The Kent State Massacre?
Yeah.
The National Guard troops. My friend Peter Zorn that went to the University of Miami with me was from Sandusky, Ohio, and he
Uh-huh.
was in that National Guard unit there, and he
Uh,
swore that he had no idea what the heck happened. They heard a shot and all hell broke loose, and it's something he carried with him for till the end of his life. Printmaker. It's funny because you reminded me that I forgot that you and I were both, that was like our second thing, was printmaking.
yeah, yeah.
Have you gone back to it at all, or?
Not really. Not really. It's just I have so much to do within what I do at home, and that would be, having a press, and it's an investment, and space that
Yeah.
I guess I could do some monoprints and different things, but I'm just busy enough with drawing and painting that it doesn't cry out to me. Um, Back then we had to take it. I took it. I did lithography. I did etching. I did silk screen. I mean, everything everybody else did,
Mhm.
and did plenty of it at the time. So, but that's not. I mean, the drawing and I mean, and the painting. I mean, my paintings have layers, and I'm building in some ways, not monoprints, but through canvas on canvas,
Mhm.
and accidents and different things.
All right.
I'm satisfied.
I wanna speed forward because just having just reminiscing about SMU um, is great, and I've done it so much about with Swain's. I mean, a majority of our guests have been from Swain, and we had interactions with them, so we could speak to that. But uh, one of the things that you mentioned is the art storefronts, and I'm sure people are curious because we've all seen the pop-up ads on Facebook.
Mhm.
Do you feel comfortable talking about the investment in it, in both time
Sure,
and
sure,
money,
sure.
or?
Well, I investigated it almost at this point a year and a half ago, and went through the whole thing, and you see all that, and all the
Success
the
stories
sa-
that we put up.
the sales pushes and all that, and um, and I think on paper the investment's about $3,000. I mean, I got it for less. I um, hit it at a time that was, I don't know, 10 or 15% less or whatever. They had something. Everybody has a time when they're going to have lower costs. And they always talk about costs going up. I don't think anyone's going to have costs going up right now. Um, but I looked beyond that, and what I wanted to do was research on it. Um, and I sought out um, some artists who had done it. Three artists. I forget one person's name, and I forget where she was from. I seek them out, and then on their websites, when you find them, you have contact. So I used that contact to make an initial. Some people would never answer you, but I sought out painters. There are a lot of photographers on there. There are actually galleries, and I can get into that more. So what I did is the first person that went back and forth, and I got her on the phone. She said, "Look, I have a 50 hour a week job, plus I have this, and it's a great product, but I don't have the time to devote to it. I don't have the time to devote to it." And she had only good things to say about it, and she sold some prints and stuff. But I think if you're going into any venture, you have to give of yourself all you can. Um, and then the next person I talked to, let me see if I can find her. Yeah, Diane Beam, and she is a artist from Maine.
Bean
Um,
or beam?
Diane Beam, DianeBeem.com,
Beam.
and
Okay.
and in fact, if you go to my website, I have a thing called Artist Ramblings, because what I'm doing is I've started talking about that's my blog, And one thing about blogs is, it's pretty boring on a person's website to only have stories about themselves. So I started, and I will continue like once every 2 weeks or so. My first one is 3 artists share the Maine coast, and it's Diane Bean, Adrian LaValle, and Joe DeVenny, who's a photographer. And it's a short thing talking about them and linking to their websites. And, there's reasons behind it. I don't forget it, marketing reasons behind it. And I've got 4 on my books that I'm going to write. I'll give you, the next one's going to be, and the person knows about it. Where's my piece of paper? Here it is. If William de Kooning painted people, what would that look like? It would look like Robert Brodesky. So I'm going to tie those 2 things together. I even have one about Ron Fortier that's going to be down the road called Calligraphy of a Painter. Artist Ron Fortier makes his mark on canvas. So part of doing that. So anyway, so going full circle here, she was great. She has 4 kids. She does this part-time because she homeschools her kids. She's if you go to her website, you'll see what she does, and there's a link through my blog. So she was straightforward. She said, I've only been on it for about 1.5 years, 2 years. Okay. In 1.5 years, 2 years, I've made, it was 15 or 20,000 bucks. And I said, oh, all prints? She says, no, that's the funny thing. She said, I thought it was going to be all about the prints. But what happens is I've been selling originals and prints, but the majority has been originals. So it's about driving people there. And, someone could buy a print for 15, 20 bucks, or they can buy your original, whatever price you put there, whether it's $300 or $10,000. But it's about getting people. And they have it is not, and then I talked to another guy. So Diane gave me her. She said, it's not easy. It's hard work. Nothing's easy. Nothing's overnight. And the people will tell you when they're the sales pitch, you have to be ready to invest your time and energy into these things, any job, to do well. So Diane said she looks at herself as a part-timer because she has all this other stuff to do. And then I talked to another guy. I can't think of his name right now, but he's out of Texas. And he makes $200,000 a year, full time. He's been doing it since they started this. Let me see if I can find him on my. Just take a second. But anyways, I can't. But anyways, he's out of Texas and Mexico, and he does his own prints, and he does famous people, and he gets a lot of commissions. Someone might want who was a musician who just died recently, the famous musician. You posted a couple things about him.
John Prine.
John Prine, someone commissioned him to do a John Prine painting, large, and then he sells them on T-shirts and prints, and he does all these outdoor shows where you get a booth and sells his prints, and he works it. He does it full time, and he says it's a lot of work. Don't let anyone fool you. I'm constantly busting my butt. So I look at it as I'm doing it part time. The back end is fabulous. It's not easy. I have a good sense of doing that stuff because of my background. People struggle with it, but I even had a guy on 2 times they were on the phone with me for over 2 hours each time, helping me through stuff. They have live chat 24/7, 7 days a week. You might be I spoke with this guy, Marco, from Romania. So anyways, they have a whole back end that tells you, if you know nothing about marketing, they have a whole calendar. You do something every day. And they tell you what it needs to be. So anyways,
you have to pay that fee every year, or is that a one-time fee?
No, that's a one-time fee.
Oh, you just froze, Dave.
And And then after that,
Oh, wait, you froze. You got to back up.
okay.
Let's see. Last thing you said was about the back end. You got to
Okay.
really work hard. Yeah.
Okay. It's hard work. It took me, and I know how they want you to get your stuff up and running in 2 weeks. I said I'll have it running when I have X amount of paintings up, and I'm satisfied. I'm not gonna. So it took me. I started it on a day a week prior to when I was going to because of a promotion that they came out with. 'Cause and but didn't work on it for a week. So I started working on it like April 4th. I was ready to go live on the 13th, and the 19th of April. I was what I would call invested following the program.
Now, is that
Um,
a $3,000 fee a subscription, yearly subscription, or is that a
no,
one-time fee?
it's a one-time fee up front. You don't get it back. And then it comes to about, well, I paid, part of the promotion is if I paid for a year of monthlies up front, I would get a year and a half. And they had other ones. If I bought 2 years, I'd get a third. And I says, you
Right,
know
right.
what? I'll go with the one. And I paid, it comes to, if you pay straight, it's like $55 a month. But if you pay up front for your year, it's 600, which cuts the cost a little bit. But the funny thing about it is if you check most the other good websites like Squarespace and get their business product and all that stuff with where stores are set, it's going to come to about the same thing monthly. So it's getting over that mental hump of that initial payment. I ended up saying that's investing in myself. I can write it off anyways. But what also it's tied to is they have a printer that you're tied to, so you everything can be. Um, so how it's set up, if someone purchases something as a print, um, it goes through either it goes through their system, and you set up through. Oh, I can't think of the system. See, this is. But anyways, you set up the banking side where someone puts their charge in. It goes to, Stripe.
Mhm.
So you set up a Stripe account. The Stripe account takes that payment, puts it in your bank, and then the payment then they get notified at the printer. He gets a certain cut, his costs plus shipping, and that's up front. You see, what the prices are. There's graphs and everything,
A
and
couple of
then
couple of more questions, real quick. Number one,
mhm,
you don't do anything as far as the printing end of this thing is concerned,
nope,
right? The
nope,
images are already on file, so they print it, pack it, ship it for you,
yep.
and you get paid. You get a check,
And
or
yeah, well, you get the check right away. Your money goes in your bank within 24 hours,
all right,
or 30 hours. Well, depending on when it is.
right.
Um, I actually bought a piece for myself, not for myself, for one of my pieces to see the quality, and they push giveaways. So what I'm doing right now is I'm giving away a real painting. Now, if someone bought a real painting from me, they would let's say they'd go in, they'd buy it. It would go do the whole Stripe thing, except I'd be notified and I have to pack it and ship it to them because I own it and I have
Right,
it.
right, right.
And then, and the art storefronts gets, don't, I'm going to say 3%. It might be less.
I was going to ask you about that commission. That was my second question.
Yep, they have a small commission, but actually what it does is it sets everything up. Um, Taxes, I'm from Massachusetts, so if anyone from Massachusetts, they have to pay taxes. It's all set billables. You get statement at the end of the year. It's very organized. They have a Facebook page that's private, so you can run things back and forth to people. They have videos. They have online video chats with the owners and marketing 2 or 3 times a week. So there's one today at 2 o'clock that I'll put on while I'm painting.
I'd like to do a show, what I call a series. In other words, it'll be several shows. I don't know how many, on the same topic. So if you think that that's of any value, for yourself or some of the other people you've made contact with, or even some of your contacts at our storefronts who push product, we're also looking for sponsorships. I'll be upfront about that. But we've got about another 9 minutes or so. So I want to go back to SMU.
And we'll see it. Check me in a year how that our
Yeah,
storefronts is working.
no,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know.
So I'm going to go back to SMU, and I want you to do a little bit of reminiscing about each one. Tonieri, Elliott, Cummings, and McCoy. I have one question for you about Cummings. I for some reason between him and Tonieri, those are the ones that I don't know, the deepest impressions, the deepest friendships, respect, all the other stuff. But there was one thing about Herb Cummings. He would always say, "One man's broccoli is another man's asparagus." Do you remember that, or is that something?
I remember things like that. But my big line from him is, and we all kid about it today, is Dave, or take what I say with a grain of salt. Whatever lands on you, keep. Whatever doesn't. And I got A's from him, but at the same time, I was taking him for senior painting. I was taking Ed Tognieri for independent study in painting, and one of our friends would always say, hey, our friend Ed Condon would come up and tell me, Dave, he keeps on asking me why you don't pay attention to him. This is Herb, he's telling me to take me with a grain of salt, and I did kind of. Ed Tognieri was like mine. He was, as close as I would say anyone could be as a teacher. I still have letters of recommendation that I used from him that he hand wrote. I'd gone to his house once or twice. He was just amazing because his compassion and his understanding to me and his knowledge was it just connected. I think Bill Elliott may be next because he told you the truth.
Oh yeah, it was for me. It was like a rubber band effect. I didn't feel the snap until years later. And Frank McCoy, for me, was like the fourth one where I remember I could never figure him out because his mantra was big flat shapes. And I kept saying, the guy's from Kansas. What the hell else does he know? And I remember in the middle of a drawing class, I got so frustrated with him, I just shouted out, "Big flat shapes!" And they all stared at me and went, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
I wanted to pick up the phone right away and say, I want to let you know that like 30-something years later, it finally, I'm slow on some of those things,
Yeah, but, I mean, they were all close.
Yeah.
They were all close.
Yeah. They were friends.
And, I mean, they even came to our parties, our class parties and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't happen too often. Maybe today, I don't know.
No, it's very standoffish. Let me very, very quickly about them. I would love to be able to do a show. I know you're still in communication with Ed Tonieri's daughter.
I haven't. I lost the email, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
And she, when I first had a few shows, she saw something, and I, for the life of me, haven't been able to find it, and she hasn't. So.
I've been in communication with Alma Cummings. I've been trying to get her on because she herself is a painter. But I'd love to be able to have a show with her, and someone else other than me, like yourself, to reminisce about her dad. It's very difficult for me to speak about him. It's kind of weird. I get more teary talking about him than I do about my father.
Well, that's another story for another day.
Yeah, exactly. And so it would be great. And also the idea of if we could, I obviously want to do a show on each one of the members that we have in tech. I mean, we've already done Bob Rodesky, So that would be another good thing to do. And again, it's all about not just reminiscing. It's about putting this down into a historical context,
Hmm.
because we were quite fortunate. I mean,
Oh
4 years of college for $2,400 complete. That's
yeah,
unheard.
yeah, yeah. And I took extra credits, so I took like two extra classes. I took every from sophomore year on. I took independent studies.
Yeah, I did with Tonieri. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so um, it's like, what's that 5 credits worth today that I paid nothing for because it was I could pay, take up to X amount, and I took it all.
yeah.
It wasn't any more work really, but it was
In
another voice.
retrospect, in retrospect, um, going back, looking at this, um, what do you would there be anything that you would do over? Is there anything that you'd love to be able to go back to and embrace, or that kind of thing?
Oh, you don't get second times. I just what I embrace, because I see it in my wife, and I had a parent. I had parents who,
Hmm.
um, I had parents who pushed me, um, to do 120% whatever I did, and they didn't care that I was into the arts. They said, as long as you're happy, do what you want. It'll all work itself out. You do. And I am thankful to that because there are a lot of artists, people who became artists later on, that parents, you gotta, you have to make a living and this and that. And in my
Right.
own way, I did, but I made a living in the arts. Being a designer is still an artist. I still, whether it was making spreads, working with photographers and illustrators, and putting together, 300-page magazines. I worked on an art publication. I to this day when I do design work, it's still art. My mind works in a similar but dissimilar way. Um, I think what comes out of all of it is I look at the negative space as important as the positive space, and um, that's you know um, everything is important. So I'm thankful for my parents who allowed
Yeah,
me to grow in my
they
way.
were wonderful people. I still remember them quite fondly. I mean, I can't look at chicken without thinking of your mother.
Yeah, because you put pepper on instead of paprika,
Oh well, that was
red pepper,
yeah, no, it was cayenne because it was
cayenne.
it was red,
Red.
and
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was in a rush. But no, seriously, the her whole concept of how she kept things going, it was always good. All right, we got to wind it down. One final question. Um, what would you like to be known for when you're no longer walking on the earth? What would you like to have been remembered for?
Um, a person who pushed his artistic envelope always, even if it's slightly, but did things that weren't expected with normal things, and to be known as a person who is giving and caring.
So a risk taker on one side and a thinker on another side.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I mean, I might paint flowers, but not too many people paint them like me. When you say flowers,
Exactly.
you know, I look at those my paintings as conversations of life, and I'm just using the flowers as a vehicle.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
David, thank you so much.
oh,
This has been fantastic,
yeah, great fun.
and I really appreciate your time. And we'll give you a heads up on to when this podcast will drop. At this point now, we're probably 6 weeks out now because we maintain an archive
Hmm.
to keep the flow going. And this is Skype. If you haven't guessed it already, the quality is not always par excellence, but Once again, this is Ron Fortier with the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the South Coast Artist Index. We had our guest, David Dauer, painter, designer, Renaissance man.
No.
You ruined my closing.
Sorry.
With that, we bid you a fond farewell.
Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.